welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Monday, September 27th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. And today we have two interviews. Our first is with Shoshone Bannock reporter and author Mark Trahant, who is beginning his coverage and observations of the midterm elections and what the financial impact of the pledge and election of certain personalities might end up doing to Indian country. And secondly, we go to our Potawatomi friend, assistant professor of religious studies at the Indiana University at the Indianapolis Campus, Johnny Flynn, who has been concerned about the issues of disenrollment, and he gives us a little update on that one.
Mark Trahant, give us a little idea of what's up on your end of the world with Indian affairs.
Well, I've been writing a lot about elections. The phrase I used in one column was Indian country ought to have the president's back. I think that this president has been more active than, I think you could make the case, than any president since Nixon. You could certainly argue about Clinton, whether it be the Indian Health Care Improvement Act or the Tribal Law and Order Act. I mean, this has been an engaged president. And the policies we care about, if he doesn't get a Congress that he can work with, are going to go down. I mean, there's just no way around it. The post I wrote today was that if the Pledge to America were carried out, Indian Health Service would be looking at a 24% budget cut, 24%. And that means a quarter of the people, a quarter of the resources for an agency that's already severely underfunded.
And the pledge is the Republican pledge, no new taxes, cutting programs to confine ourselves within the budget, so there is no deficit spending on it?
There still would be huge deficit spending. They want to roll back the federal budget to 2008. One of the problems with their whole logic is they want to protect Social Security and Medicare at all costs and tax cuts at all costs. And there's absolutely no way that the mathematics works if you want to do those two things.
And, okay, when you say that Indian country would take a 24% cut on services, that's just Indian Health Service. What about Indian education, BIA, housing, and those kinds of things? Is this across the board that it might take place?
It'd be across the board. Yeah, it wouldn't be 24%. I just actually looked up those numbers, but it would be significant. It would be less than 24%. One of the reasons why IHS is so big a number is that the Obama administration has boosted IHS spending every year they've been in office. And they've felt it's underfunded and wanted to get it more on a better field.
When you're comparing this president with Nixon, Nixon got through a lot of legislative initiatives. Clinton seemed to be good in the budget process, though there was some legislative initiatives there. What's the comparison? Is Obama both expenditures and legislation, or where does he fall in the paradigm?
He's legislation with several significant acts, including the Tribal Law and Order Act and Indian Health Care Improvement Act. Budget, he's been good across the board on Indian programs. I mean, you can argue about some things taking a hit, and that's certainly true, but I think that's the environment. The other thing that I think makes Obama better than Clinton or Nixon is the appointment process. He's appointed Native Americans across the board to the White House, to different fiduciary responsibilities like the Solicitor at Interior. That's a big deal. That's never before happened in any government in history.
And those appointments have long-term effect because you're placing Native people in positions of policy-making committees and commissions and so forth?
Right, over non-Indian issues. I mean, it's not just Indian issues. And I think that's the long way to kind of change things.
Okay, and when you're saying, do we have his back covered? You're saying, is Indian country going to turn out a vote that's going to vote for people to maintain control of the legislative process the way it is now, especially in Indian affairs?
Well, we got some key races. Indian country could turn out in big numbers and ought to turn out in big numbers, say in Arizona, where there's a Navajo running for Secretary of State, which in Arizona is the second highest office. It's next to the governor. So that potentially could be an Indian governor in 4 or 8 years. But it means getting people registered. It means people getting excited. It means people turning out. And it's that ground game that's essential.
Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic ticket in Alaska,
Diane Beeson, absolutely.
Right.
That's the rabbit.
And then have you had a chance to look at any of the Oklahoma candidates as of yet? My understanding there's a few coming out of there.
Oklahoma, Wisconsin. This is an exciting year, but Indian country is not excited. I was really struck by some of the comments I got in the last column I wrote, how I think people are disappointed because they didn't get everything they wanted and out of Obama. And I would just say tough luck. You got more than this has been happening in a long time. And it's going to take, it's not something that can just happen in 10 minutes. You have to work at this over a long haul.
My impression about that would be like this. I worked in the governor's office for 4 years during the 80s as a political appointee. And people have this level of expectations that things are just going to change dramatically. And it rarely changes by night or day. Is that part of the problem, a level of expectations?
I think that's exactly what it is. I think you're right. And I think it's the same with tribal government. And people look at tribal government, vote someone in and think everything's going to change. And it takes time, it takes a strategy, and it takes execution. And we're barely into the execution phase with President Obama. And so I think you need at least another 2 years, but probably 6 to see what works.
Indeed. My impression of politicians is almost a longer-term view than being the head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. My impression is the day you got appointed as head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you started accumulating enemies or people who don't like your decision-making process, and it's all downhill from day one.
That's probably right.
This president has delivered more than any other president in the past, is what it seems like, in small pieces that have impact for the long-term future, though.
Right. And in the real world, I mean, the application of domestic violence laws is going to affect real women tomorrow. I mean, it has immediate impact. And that's something we ought to be celebrating and say, this is a good deal. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. And I also think it allows us to take a longer systemic view of why there's so much violence in some of our communities and try to work at that. So it's both short-term and long-term, which is, I think, the right approach in politics.
Okay. Well, we'll keep on top. We've got October to look at all these candidates. I want to look at them a little bit more depth, but I want to get some other people in on the conversation. Let's do a roundup on November 2nd with the results, okay?
Sounds good, Paul.
Thanks for joining with us again today, Mark.
Look forward to it again.
And now we go to our Potawatomi friend in Indiana, Johnny Flynn.
Johnny Flynn, give us a little bit of report. We had you on a week or two ago in regards to some disenrollment issues. Have you heard back from anybody in regards to that event there?
Yeah, my cousin Diana Brassfield was disenrolled from the Citizen Potawatomi tribe under the pretense that she was enrolled in another tribe, the Osage Nation of Oklahoma.
Or not enrolled, but receiving benefits, right?
That was the pretense, was that receiving benefits, in fact, constitutes enrollment. That's the way the legislation that was written under which she was disenrolled. So, if potentially anybody, Citizen Potawatomi, who works for another tribe could be disenrolled. And we know that this is a purely political move to try to silence opposition to the corruption that's in the tribe. Now, she did receive the official letter, and she has 30 days in which to appeal, interestingly enough, back to the very same people who unanimously booted her out of the tribe.
Right, so the appeal is back to the tribal council or back to the enrollment committee?
The tribal council actually serves as the enrollment committee. So, with the Citizen Potawatomi, all the power is concentrated in the hands of the tribal chairman. And the way he wrote that legislation, the tribal council had no choice but to disenroll her the way it was written. Because she does, in fact, receive minimal payment from the Osage for an inherited share, insignificant, fractionated share of Osage mineral rights.
Indeed. And now she has a chance to appeal this. Is there a judicial process to appeal this disenrollment as well that you're aware of?
Not the way the legislation is written. As you know, sovereignty is a double-edged sword. It can be used to protect Indian tribes against encroachment by the states, and it can also be used as a way to lop the heads off any opposition to existing tribal officials. And so in this case, that's what's going on. They refuse to allow the case to go into the court system, be it tribal court system or federal court. So we're trying to figure out a way to get this into federal court.
Right, which has been the problem in the past. A lot of tribal members from other tribes can't find that forum. It's not a habeas corpus. You're not being imprisoned, and therefore federal courts seem to keep saying, well, that's an internal matter. We can't look at it. There's no review. In some cases, tribal councils sit as the appellate court within a judicial system as well, so eventually it might come all the way back to them again, even in other forums. Have you heard from other people in regards to this issue?
Yeah, there's quite a few people, tribal members, who are... There's been two effects. The number one effect is that people who have been opposition to the tribal, to the chairman, have put their head in the sand. And the second is that people all across the country who are citizen Potawatomi as well as other tribes are appalled at the way that this is going. So disenrollment has come to Oklahoma, and either we band together to try to stop it, or we allow it to happen.
Okay, well, we're going to check back in with you. We got some other people coming up in the future here that want to talk about that issue, so we're going to talk to you again about that, Johnny.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate your interest and your support.
Yeah. One last question. You're not making soup, are you?
It's raining out here, and my dog wants in the house.
Oh, I'd be darned, man. It sounded like one of those squeals when you're boiling a pot ready to make some soup. All right, Johnny, we'll talk to you again soon. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Bamapi.
Okay. Bani Maminawa.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country. On this edition of the Native News Update, we want to thank you all for joining in here with us. Come back again soon.